Welcome to the Health in Motion podcast. I am your host, Evie. I am a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner who loves to help people achieve their wellness goals they once thought were impossible to reach. I am the owner of Holistically Restored, and through my coaching practice, I have been able to guide my clients through their own health journeys and teach them to truly understand their body. With a focus on hormone, thyroid, and weight management, I strive to instill the knowledge, confidence, and encouragement everyone deserves. If you enjoy this content, I'd love for you to subscribe and also leave a review on Apple Podcast. Please tell your friends, family, or anyone who is curious about bettering themselves in a holistic way. The more, the merrier. Please keep in mind this podcast is created for educational purposes only and is not to be taken as medical advice. I am so happy you're here and ready to learn. Let's do it. All right, awesome. Let's do it. So I'm really excited to have you on here today. Thank you so much for, again, taking the time and being willing to talk to me and, to everyone listening about, Rawr Organics and the protein bars and what the story is behind that, what your story is. I think it's really important for people to understand the people behind the products that they're buying and consuming. So I'm really excited to hear more about it. And I'd love if we could start with an introduction from you of who you are, what is Rawr Organics, what are we going to talk about here today?
Yeah. So my husband and I actually both come from the finance industry. I studied marketing and finance, and I didn't have any plans to ever launch a protein bar.
Yeah.
And so a little about me, I was an athlete growing up in high school and college. I was a collegiate runner. So cross country, track, like distance running was my jam. And then got into bodybuilding industry because I had an injured spine. And that is kind of what led me on the health journey that led to eventually starting a bar many years later. But yeah, I love to run and lift and eat healthy. And my background is definitely not with food, it's the business industry. So,
Yeah, yeah. So when you were an athlete, I'm sure that there was some education around food, right? Just how to optimize that so performance is better, or at least hopefully. Like what role did
uh,
that like maybe not. What role did that play in growing up and then also when you got into bodybuilding because that's a huge thing. Nutrition is huge
yeah.
then. So, how did I guess my question is from when you started the bodybuilding and things like that, is that when you started to notice things of like, hey, there's something missing in terms of protein bars, we need something better? Like, how did that come about for you? Because that's pretty popular in that realm of fitness, is to utilize things like that.
Yeah. So I'll first explain as a distance runner. So in high school and college, unfortunately, nutrition wasn't really a big thing. It was all about optimizing your carbs. So at the end of each practice in college, my coach would take out a huge bin of snacks and he'd say, "Okay, we just did a really hard workout. I want you to grab something and eat it." And it was usually like Pop Tarts, to be honest. It was terrible. And so my understanding of health and nutrition from like college sports was terrible. I think it was even better in high school actually because they had us lifting weights and running, whereas college it was just running and sometimes running in the morning and the evening. So you're just breaking down and wearing down your body and then just slamming it with these processed carbs. But in the bodybuilding industry, that is when my brain started to shift and become more open because as a runner, our coach would always say, like, y'all can eat whatever you want because you run. And so there was just such a lack of value in regards to what we were putting in our bodies because we knew we were going to burn through it. But as a bodybuilder, it was all about what you eat and not necessarily taking into consideration like micronutrients and um, is it organic? Is it non-GMO? But at least it shifted my brain to think about, oh my gosh, am I getting any protein in my diet? Is my food processed? What's in the ingredients? And like how many carbs am I consuming? And like, am I eating any fruits and vegetables? So bodybuilding, I wouldn't necessarily say it was like the healthiest industry, but it was a great way for me to start to become more aware of what I was putting into my body and how it affected me, what gave me energy, what kept me feeling stable and full and satisfied. And then from there, um, I started to do an even deeper dive. And basically, this is probably a little off question here, but
No, go for it.
from doing bodybuilding for 2, 3 years, in my off season, I wasn't getting a cycle. And I'm like, this is really weird. I'm eating a lot of calories and I'm not restricting myself. And there should be no reason that I'm not getting a cycle. So I actually went to a natural doctor and didn't even tell her about my current diet, which, like, the bodybuilder diet is like chicken, rice, and broccoli,
Yeah.
maybe some sweet potatoes. And you're told to eat only green veggies because they're lower glycemic and lower carb. And so I went in and I wasn't eating yolks in my eggs either. I was just eating the whites because it was all the bodybuilder diet. So I went in to see this natural doctor and she's like, hmm, you're really deficient in sulfur. She's like, are you eating egg whites but not the yolks? And I was like, yes. And she's like, are you eating just like green veggies but not getting like colorful amount of veggies in your diet? And I'm like, yes. And she's like, yes, you need to start adding in the yolks, start adding in garlic, start adding in onion, because your testosterone's off the charts. And if you just start to eat better, your hormones are going to regulate and come back in sync. And I was like, okay, well, let's give this a try. So I started adding in garlic. I was taking like just a garlic capsule at night, but then I started adding the foods back into my diet as well. And I've been regular ever since. So that was like the key for me to start evaluating, like, okay, I thought even as a bodybuilder, I was eating healthy because it wasn't all this processed stuff. But then I was like, okay, is it organic? Is it non-GMO? Like, is there sucralose? Is there different fillers and binders? And so that's kind of like the journey that led us to even create a bar, was just, having things with my health that were kind of red flags, and then learning and just wanting to have the optimized health that I could.
Yeah, and I feel like that's how a lot of these things stem is a personal experience and personal story of like something's not right and then you learn about it for yourself and you're like, wait a second, there's probably so many other people who are going through this too. And especially with
Mhm.
bodybuilding, that's common because yeah, it is very much like chicken, rice, broccoli, or like quinoa, steak,
Yeah,
asparagus or
yeah.
something. And it's like you realize that okay, although this isn't the worst thing for me, it's definitely not optimal. And so then
Right.
adding in those micronutrients like you mentioned, like that's amazing that you were able to heal that part of your body just through nutrition.
Mhm.
And also being open to do that too, because that can be scary to do something different or to go against what you've been doing for so long.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, that's awesome. So then how did the bar come about? Like was that something you started making for yourself? Like how did that actually become a thing?
Yeah, so when I was in the bodybuilding industry, I really liked the Quest bar before I became really educated on health, and it was because I had to have a certain amount of protein and a limited amount of carbs when I was prepping for shows, and I was having some gluten issues at the time. So I'm like, at the back then, oh my gosh, it's like 2012, 2013. They were like the only gluten-free protein bar on the market. And so I gravitated towards them and I ended up getting a sponsorship from them. So I was getting free product and doing events for them. And after about a year of eating the bar every day, I just wasn't feeling great. And I was like, this can't be right because everything else in my diet is really clean. And so I'm like, the only thing I'm eating that I don't fully know what's all in it is this bar. And my husband was like, yeah, he's like, that bar is not good. And his health journey is different than mine because he struggled with he was pre type 2 diabetes, and he was able to reverse it through eating really nutrient dense, super low glycemic. And so when I met him, I was more into macros, he was more into micros, and it was like the perfect mesh of our brains. And so he's like, yeah, that bar is trash. But he's like, you have to research it for yourself to understand why I'm saying that. So I started researching the ingredients and just how they're processed, and like a low quality whey protein, all these different fillers and binders. They had this fiber in there that was basically like, at the time, it was a super highly processed form of corn, and it's so liquidized that it actually is absorbed as a sugar, and it is like a syrup, and they use it to bind the bar, and they advertise it as a fiber, um, and like technically your body doesn't process it as a fiber, so it's like a sweetener but they can say that the bar is like 2 carbs because they label it a fiber. So anyways, really nerdy stuff, but I did a really deep dive, and this is the kind of stuff that I uncovered, and I'm like, "Okay, that makes sense. 18 grams of a fake fiber with low quality whey protein, and then like sucralose and stevia and low GLUN-HAO, which are really highly processed, sweeteners." And so I was like, "These are the culprits that are upsetting my stomach." And so I was kind of frustrated because I'm like, okay, now I need to find a bar to replace this because even though the ingredients aren't great, the macronutrient profile was pretty awesome. So I just started scouring like co-ops and grocery stores and especially Whole Foods. And the bars that had the cleanest ingredient list typically were like 8 grams of protein, or they were like 20 grams of sugar. And I was just, oh my gosh, how do I find a bar that is high enough protein so I feel stable from it, but not spiked from the sugar? And then the ones that actually had high enough protein were the ones with the fake sweeteners. So
Yeah.
I resorted to the kitchen, but I never planned to launch anything. I just was frustrated. So I just started dabbling around and thinking of ingredients that I liked, that I uncovered recently in my health journey, like flaxseed, coconut oil, pea protein, nut butters, different things like that. And because my brain was super nerdy from bodybuilding, tracking all of my meals for like 2, 3 years, I was like, okay, if I put this amount of protein in with that, and I did these equations, like, and if I do that and that, then it would be like this amount of carb and this amount of protein. So I kind of did this nerdy equation to create like a prototype bar, and it wasn't what we've launched, but it was close. And me and my husband just started bringing it to work as like our snack. And that's how Rawr began. It was just a concept in the kitchen, create out of a frustration. And then it wasn't for like another year, maybe 2 years, where we were like, maybe we should pursue this.
Yeah, wow, I love that you started doing it for yourself and then you're like, "Oh, there might like there's something to this." And so how did you take it from kitchen to I'm taking it to work to then a couple years later of like, "Oh, maybe we should do something with this." Like what did that look like?
Yeah, so my husband and I are Christians, and like the way that we look at life is we want to do what God's best is and what His plan is. And so we were like, it'd be really fun to launch this, but if this isn't like the best for us, we don't want to put all our eggs in this basket and either have it fail or have it distract and derail us from what our calling and purpose is. So in the years like 2015 to 2016, 17, we would kind of joke about it and dream about it. But really, we were like, God, if this is what you have for us, like, you need to make it plain as day, make it clear. And if it's not you, like, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing in the finance industry. So I was actually at a women's conference. I think it was maybe like 2016, June. And one of the guest speakers didn't know me. I had never met her. And she was like, I feel strongly that the Lord is saying someone here has a creative food idea, and if that's you, can you please stand? And I was like, it's not me. There's someone here that has a creative food idea that's like way better than mine, and they're probably a chef and they've been in kitchens for years. And so I didn't stand. But my in laws were in the row behind me, and they knew that me and Jake had been daydreaming about this bar and talking about it. So they were pointing at me, and I didn't know. And she's like, "You, honey, in the front row, there's people pointing at you. I think this word is for you." And she's like, "You've been asking God if it's a good idea or a God idea, and it's a God idea." And I was like, "Oh my gosh,
Oh my
this is
gosh, yeah, I
crazy."
just got
I was
chills.
like, "This is literally what I've been like waiting to hear because I don't want to pursue it if it's not." And so she said a few other things, and I called Jake. I'm like, okay, this is what happened. And he's like, all right. So, but it was still a journey because, like, when God calls you to something, or like when you feel called to a certain thing, and as you probably understand, dreams don't happen overnight. It's a process, and you have to have the perfect timing. So it was like another year or two before we felt we were to slip away from our professional careers and kind of lay that down and make this big transition. And before we even went to launch the bar, we felt we were supposed to go live in Africa for several months first. So it was like a year or two transition before everything kind of fell into place.
Yeah, wow, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that too because it's it's something that I think a lot of people struggle with if they have these ideas and they feel like they're called to do something, but they don't ever do it because maybe they're scared, they're doubtful, or they don't feel like they have that call. And so it's like you having even your family kind of reinforcing at that conference of like, no, this is for you. Like that's
Yeah.
awesome that was your situation. And tell me a little bit about the story of you being in Africa because that's on the wrappers, isn't it? Or on
Mhm.
the branding? I know I've seen the story of
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, so when when we felt we were supposed to quit our jobs, like our heart has always been for the nations. Like we would probably go on like 2 mission trips a year when we were in the finance industry, and that's where we would feel most alive. Just we just love other cultures and people groups and just being able to just serve people. And so we felt we were supposed to go to Africa, and we went to Mozambique for 3 months to just basically volunteer at the ministry. And we were kind of like, well, what is this all about? Like, why are we doing this before the bar? And I like to figure things out. So I'm like, God, why'd you send us here? Like, what is this all about? And the gal who started this ministry, it's amazing. She's been there for like 20, 30 years now, but it's gone from literally her just picking street kids up off the street and bringing them in her home, like kids that were homeless and orphaned, to now they're feeding over 10,000 children a day. They have 3 public schools. They're the top ranked schools in the nation. And it's just like so much is being done. So, anyways, we went to serve with this ministry. And her biggest thing that she iterates is like not to do things from your own strength, but to basically like do it with the Lord and to not just strive, but to just be restful. And so I'm like, okay, I think I need to hear that before we go home and start this bar, not to just do it in my own strength and make it happen, but to like be so filled up spending time with the Lord and just in worship that like I'm doing it from a place of overflow and hearing from him what to do and getting the strategy from him. And when we were there, we felt like we were supposed to connect our heart for missions and for children to the bar, and so that our time in Africa would be like foundational. And so right now we give 10% of the net proceeds of our business to feed hungry children, and 5% goes to this ministry, and then 5% goes to Feed My Starving Children, which is a really large nonprofit here in Minnesota. Well, anyways, what we want to start doing as soon as we can kind of step away more from the making process ourselves is develop a bar for hungry children, so that instead of just partnering with these organizations that are handing out dry rice and bean packets to children, it can be like a bar that they can eat. Because when we were there, one of the biggest issues is water. A lot of the nation is in drought on and off, and these kids are being handed dry rice and bean packs, and they have to go home and make the meal. And if they don't have clean water, or if they don't have access to water, it can be really difficult to go make that meal. And so we would love to like supplement the current feeding programs with another meal for these children.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that vision and that goal for you to be able to give that back in that way. Um, with this, especially being like you had done that right before you launched this. And so now it's almost full circle of like this trip
Hmm.
kind of helped solidify this is what we're doing. It gave us the strength for
Right.
that. And then now we want to give back
Right.
in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's really beautiful. And I would love to hear a little bit more about when you first started, were you selling at like markets? Like were you just kind of hanging out local? Cause now you're online. Like, I mean, I buy from you. I'm in Ohio, like you're in Minnesota, right? So like,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear how that started of just getting out there and getting people to know, okay, Rawr Bar is a thing.
Yeah. So the way we launched was a farmer's market in the Minneapolis area, and it's in a really cute little part of Minneapolis where it's like cottagey style homes and just like lots of little mom and pop shops. And they had this beautiful outdoor market in the summertime, and someone told us that yeah, it's a really great place to launch. And so we launched at a farmer's market, and we didn't really know what to expect, but that community was awesome because it's a lot of like CEOs and business owners and really like fitness savvy and nutrition savvy people. We didn't really know the area that well, but it was like our perfect niche, like people that care about the ingredients. And so that was instrumental for us, because then when it was too cold to be at that market anymore, we had like this customer base of people that were coming every Sunday to the market to buy from us. And when winter hit, we just moved everything online. So we had like, some level of sustainability, and they were connecting us to local gyms. And so at this point, we were like probably already in like 10 gyms, just like a few months into the business. Like things were just happening very organically. And so then when we moved everything to our website, then we started to like add the capability to ship outside of our state. And from there, a lot of it has truly just been word of mouth, and even just connecting with like I think you probably call them like micro influencers, but like I'd say the best people that we connect with through like Instagram are people that are, well, like you, like holistic nutritionists, or like some of the best people too is stay-at-home moms that are crunchy,
Yeah.
that like care about ingredients and won't give their kid anything that would, you know, have a bad ingredient in it. Like there's some of the best people to partner with. But yeah, it's been very organic. The growth has just truly been like word of mouth and through social media, people chit chatting and shared it on their story and stuff like that.
Yeah, I love that. That's really funny, the crunchy moms. But they need something like that. I mean, I know a lot of moms that are like that of like they've kind of gotten into health themselves and like they're really into it for their kids and they're like, "Oh my gosh, all of these bars or all of these snacky things are just so bad or they're filled with so many processed things." And so
Mhm.
now they have an option for that. I think that's really funny. I found you through Instagram. It was social media. It was another like health person that was posting about these. And I was like, oh, if she's posting about it, that must be legit. And I looked into it and I was like, it is legit. Oh my gosh, finally. Cause I have
That's
a similar perspective to like Quest, right? Like there's so many
awesome.
bars that the macros look fine, but ingredients are not, or opposite.
Right,
Ingredients are great, but macros are not good.
right, right.
So this really does fuse the two of this is a real protein bar. It's not a bar being marketed as a protein bar with like 8 grams of protein. Cause I'm like,
Right.
okay, that's not legitimate. Like so then there's education around that of like, hey, this is higher in fat. So I wouldn't really be calling this just a protein bar, right? So it's nice that there's something like that that exists. And I actually want to talk about the bars now. So I know it's kind of hard to describe, but describe the bars. I'd love for you to go into the ingredients because that's something that immediately drew me in of like, oh, I
Mhm,
actually know all of these ingredients on here.
mhm.
Flavors, refrigeration, those types of things. So tell us all about
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So our bar is refrigerated, and I know that can be an inconvenience for a lot of people, but the good news is it just means that it has real ingredients. We use a lot of organic nut butters, and some are raw as well. And so if they're not refrigerated, just like if you would buy like a raw nut butter at a store, um, they don't necessarily go bad in a month, but they lose a lot of that pop and flavor. So our bars, we worked with a food scientist, and after like even a year of working with her, our bars hadn't per se spoiled or had anything dangerous. But yeah, they last 1 month out of the fridge. That's what we say because of the nut butters, and then 6 months in the fridge and 12 months in the freezer. The base of each bar is organic pea protein, and then all the bars have like flaxseed, Himalayan sea salt, coconut nectar, blackstrap molasses, coconut oil. Like that is the base of every bar. They all have those ingredients. And then in regards to flavors and tweaking them, is really just like adding in some kind of either essential oils or dried fruit, or even like grinding up coffee beans or grinding up fresh nuts. So, for example, our banana nut bar has freshly ground walnuts and cinnamon and freeze dried bananas in it. And then there's some almond butter in it. We have a bunch of different flavors. So that's kind of like how we come to like the flavor profile, is just taking real food and taking essential oils to give it that flavor pop. We have our first two flavors we ever launched, which are pretty basic, but they're like top sellers. Our dark chocolate almond butter bar and our dark chocolate peanut butter bar. So it has like a thin layer of 70% dark chocolate on top, and it's sweetened with coconut sugar. So there's no white sugar in any of the products, which is great for people that are, maybe like having to watch the glycemic index, or maybe they have diabetes. We have people that are diabetic that eat our bars that are usually like our chocolate coated bars. The banana and the pumpkin and the lemon bars, because there's no chocolate on them, they have a tad bit more nectar in them to kind of bind them. And so they're a little bit higher in the coconut nectar. But like our highest sugar bar, I think, is maybe like 12 or 13 grams, and our lowest is probably 9. So basically, when I crafted it, I tried to make the bar as low sugar as I could, but still make it enjoyable to consume.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to keep the macros in consideration, but I didn't want to have the macros so low that like a 5-year-old wouldn't like the bar. Some of our best customers are little toddlers. They love cookie dough, they love peanut butter.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have a ton of other flavors. I think I mentioned a few of them. So we got almond, peanut butter, pumpkin pecan, dark chocolate raspberry, which is nut free using sunflower butter. And then we have double dark chocolate mint, which is really yummy this time of year. We have like pure peppermint oil in it and raw cacao with almond butter, and it tastes like a Girl Scout Thin Mint. And then a few other flavors. We have birthday cake, which is new, which people really like. Because I'm really anal about ingredients, I found the cleanest sprinkles I could, but like there's still sprinkles at the end of the
Yeah.
day. So, and then we have cookie dough, lemon poppy, peanut butter chip. I might have missed a flavor. Oh, we have our mocha bar, which comes in a caffeinated version and then a decaf version.
Which I love
And then,
because I actually
yeah,
only drink decaf coffee, and so when I was on your website and I was like, "Mocha," and I was like, "Okay, I can get by with that," and I was like, "They have a decaf version, that's amazing."
yeah,
Yeah, I love it.
hmm
Yeah, so my top 3, I guess if I had to I like the peanut butter chocolate chip, that one is just always so good. I really like the banana nut, and I'm usually not a banana nut person. Like banana, I only love like banana, like the actual banana, but it makes sense if you're using what freeze dried bananas you said. Like it's not like this
hmm
artificial sweetener of that.
right, right.
And then I also really like the well, I don't know if I can the top 3 is hard. I like the dark chocolate peanut butter one too, like the thin layer
Yes.
of the chocolate on top, but I love all of them. The mocha one is delicious, the pumpkin one is good, like, I've been stocking up on that for this year or for this time of year. I
hmm
have clients that really love the sunflower raspberry one, the
hmm
sunflower butter, yeah, so, yeah, it's really I have not the only one I have not tried is the peppermint one that you talked about. Maybe I need to
Oh,
add
yeah.
that. Yeah, I need to add that to my list, but yeah, yeah. So I love that. And I love the thought behind the ingredients too. Like that's a big thing. Obviously, I coach a lot of clients on ingredients and sourcing and all of that. But to know that you've taken care of that and all they have to do is just get it and eat it and like that makes it so convenient because the reality is we all need convenience when it comes to food too. Like it's not ideal to
Mhm.
think that we're only going to eat homemade stuff all the time. So knowing that I
Right.
have something that I can throw in my purse, is it's just a game changer. And I will say, because I was a little worried like, oh, refrigeration needed. I actually don't think it's a problem. Like, I just think it changes the texture of the bar. That's really it.
Mhm.
And it's not even a
Yeah.
bad change. It's just more if it's not refrigerated or straight from the fridge, to me, it's just a little softer. But I mean,
Mhm.
that's not a bad thing either because especially if it being like a nut butter bar, that kind of makes sense that it's softer.
Right,
So
right.
I personally I can take it either way. I don't mind. I like both of it. So
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah. So I would love to hear a little bit more about, we talked about the bars, we talked about the business and why that came about, but, what are you currently doing now? And, even Jake, like, what are you doing to take care of yourself? Like, how do you keep up with that routine? Because you have a fitness background, health was obviously important to you for many years, but
Mhm.
now owning a business, having it grow, having all these things like that also takes a
Mhm.
lot of time and mental
Right.
space. So, how are you taking care of yourself and what are your go tos for health?
Yeah, it's a really good question for anyone who's listening and is a business owner. They probably, I mean, you understand too, just trying to find that balance between, because there's always more work to be done, right? And just finding that balance of caring for your body and still being efficient and getting things done. And right now, we're actually in the process of hiring more people and getting our first large piece of machinery because everything is handmade. So we're at this awkward stage right now where I'm working really ridiculous hours. And so I would say the biggest thing is just being super disciplined and not compromising. What I do is I like set myself up so I can't fail. So at work, like I have a freezer here. I have tons of different organic frozen fruits. I have different like organic protein powders and ingredients, and I just keep a lot of things on me that I love. And so, if I have like a super busy day, I will just take like pea protein and frozen fruit and put some greens, and I'll just make a loaded smoothie. And then I'll put like a raw bar on top and just basically like get as many calories in as I can quickly. Obviously, chewing the smoothie slowly so that.
Yeah.
But, anyways, yeah, just basically being super organized and disciplined so that I'm not tempted to run down like the street like I would yeah, I don't even do that.
Yeah.
I I don't even have a taste for fast food, so I just couldn't even comprehend it. But yeah, I just have a bunch of things here so that I have a quick, easy way to make a meal if I'm in a rush. And then even for breakfast, I just have like a breakfast that I love that I tweak here and there. And so in the morning, it's just I know what to do. I just get it ready really quick, and then I can head into the office, and I know that I have like nutrient dense meals that are going to keep me feeling full and satisfied and stable. And then dinner is usually a little bit trickier because I used to do a lot more food prep than I do right now. But I still will try to at least have some kind of protein and carb and then with veggies. So it might just be like chicken and quinoa. And then I cycle the vegetables. I try to cycle the carbs because of my history in bodybuilding. I try to have a lot more variety in my diet nowadays. But yeah, in regards to eating, I think the biggest thing is just being disciplined, knowing what things you like, having them on deck so that you're not tempted to go and like eat something bad or you're not skipping meals and hurting your metabolism. And then regards to fitness, that is definitely really challenging in this current season. And the thing is especially hard if you've been an athlete, so your body just really craves the gym. So I just try to get in while I can. I would prefer to like lift 4 days a week and get a few runs in, but right now I'm probably lifting 3 days a week. And like if I work till like 9 or 10 at night, I'll literally just come home and go right up to the gym, and I won't let myself go down to bed
Yeah.
because if I do, there's no way it's happening. And then on the weekends is when I can usually sneak in 2 or 3 workouts. But once we're more balanced, I'll probably just get my workout in on my way into work. But right now, definitely working really long hours. So if I'm here till 9 or 10 at night, it's really hard to get like a 5 or 6 a.m. workout in.
Yeah, definitely. But what the underlying tone of what you're saying is that discipline is playing a huge role because it'd be easy for you to, I mean, you could come up with every excuse to not work out or to just get takeout or, whatever, but you having things on hand and setting yourself up to not fail is a big, big, big thing and big tip for people because if you do have everything accessible and it's easy to access, it's a lot easier to follow through with too. So
Hmm.
I think that's really good advice to have things easily accessible that you know are going to make you feel better and function better and move better and all of that, especially in a busy season like you are now.
Hmm.
Yeah. Is there anything that like in terms of how you've been like from where you first were to now, you've mentioned a couple things have changed, but what has been maybe one or two big mindset shifts when it comes to health from when you first started out when you were collegiate athlete to now? What are some big shifts in that mindset regarding food or movement, anything health related?
Yeah, I would say the least processed, the better.
Mm,
Mm, Being able to read a nutrition label, know everything that is in it, and then um, taking the time to make your own meals when you can.
mhm.
Because even if you go get a rotisserie, so you're eating chicken and you can, pull out the chicken breast or whatever, it's always going to have a lot of sodium, and there's probably going to be some fillers and binders in there. So, yeah, making your own meals when you can, but finding ways to be really efficient about it so that if you are busy, you don't really have an excuse not to be getting it in.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. It's always cool to see like what people have learned doing this because if you've been doing this for quite a while, like there's many lessons I'm sure you've learned or trial and error things that you're like, yeah, that used to work, but it doesn't anymore. So it's always helpful to hear, especially if someone is just now starting to get healthy. So,
Hmm.
yeah. I really appreciate you taking the time to share about Rawr Bar and sharing about your ingredients and your process and your story. Because, like I said in the beginning, I think it's important for us to know who the people are behind this. Could you share how people could look into this, where they can order, where they can find you online?
Yeah, so I'd say the best way to find us is probably through our website, which is just rawrorganics.com. So our bar is called Rawr Bar, but we named the company Rawr Organics just in case we were to ever have like a different products in the future, like protein or something. And then if you're on social media on Instagram, our handle is at Rawr Organics. And then on Facebook, it's at Rawr Organic without the S.
Okay, great. So I will have those linked in the show notes for sure, so people can find you there. And then I would love if we could finish up with. I always enjoy when a guest can share a health challenge for listeners. So if you had to list a challenge for people to focus in on their health for the coming week, what would that be?
Hmm. I would say I have 2 ideas.
Okay.
So one would probably be at the grocery store to just take the time to read the back of everything that you're putting in the cart before you do it. Or the second one would be, this is probably a little more tedious, but track your food for a day and just see how much sugar there is in a day of eating. Just because I feel like it really helps with self-awareness. Like it's in so many things that we aren't aware of and it adds up really quickly. And not that sugar is the devil because, fruit has its own natural sugar in it and our bars have coconut nectar, things like that. But just even looking at the sources of the sugar that you're consuming, if it's just like white sugar versus something more stable and
Yeah.
low glycemic.
I love that. I love that challenge. And reading ingredients, that's my thing. I love teaching people about it. So I'm glad you mentioned that. No one has ever had that as a challenge. So that's a really good one. Yeah. Yeah. Again, Rachel, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you talking and sharing about you and Rawr Bar and Rawr Organics. And I'm really excited to see where the company goes and obviously continue ordering from you all. And I have a retreat coming up, my first ever retreat I'm hosting. And I actually bought my order I ordered yesterday. It was for the retreat. So I'm going to take the
That's
bars there. Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to have something like that to give because we're going to be outside in nature and hiking and it's like, well, we need something easy on the go to take with us. And so I knew that okay, there, I already know what I'm going to bring. So yeah, I appreciate you creating a product like that for people like me.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, and we love working with you. It's been a
Yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah. I'm excited for all the things to come. So, all right, everybody, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Rachel. Contact information is in the show notes. Or if you have questions for me, feel free to reach out. And as always, have a great week. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I so appreciate your interest in holistic health and hope you learned something you can apply to your own life. References from this episode are linked in the show notes, as well as links to find me, Evie, on social media platforms. If you'd like to learn more about services from Holistically Restored, click on the link in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this content, I encourage you to subscribe and also leave a review on Apple Podcast. Until next time, be well, my friends.